Welcome to Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura, and when quilting, we do want things to be very precise. It's part of the hobby. And in order to do that, we need to start with our fabric being properly prepared. Fabric can be bought in pre-cuts, which will have small pieces already perfectly cut for us. We can buy fat quarters and yardage. The first thing we need to do is treat this fabric. Smaller pre-cuts are a little hard to wash, but we can still pre-cut them. But let's start with a fat quarter. When we buy fat quarters, they're folded in pretty little bundles for us, which means they do have some fold lines. It's important that when we start with our fabric is flat. Any little fold is going to add some size as we are cutting. I personally like to wash my fabric first. And there are a few reasons. When the fabric is woven and printed, they're using dyes and chemicals to give us this beautiful fabric. And I don't necessarily want to work all the time with those chemicals and those dyes. Heavily dyed fabrics, for example, this red, some of this extra color can come off. So I like to start with clean fabric that I know exactly how it's going to react. So even with these fat quarters, I will wash them. I have 3 fat quarters that were cut identical size. I had all 3 layers together and I cut them. This bottom one I did not pre-wash, but these other 2 pieces I did. So of course when you do wash them, you can have a little bit of the fabric that is frayed, but we've made sure that the fabric dye is out. And we can see that there is a difference in the fabric once it's been washed. Even if we compare the identical panel and the identical fabric, there is a big difference on how that fabric can shrink. The fabric really isn't shrinking. It's going back to how it was woven. When they're put on big woven looms, they're stretched so all the fibers can be equal. When it's relaxed, those fibers go to a normal size. So in essence, this has been stretched as it was made. This is now the relaxed version, which means we can have quite a difference in the size. So I'd rather know what I'm working with right at the beginning when I start quilting. When the fabric comes off the bolt, because of the chemicals, it is nice and flat and crisp. Well, we can duplicate that without all of those chemicals and still have beautiful fabric. So one of the things we can do is wash it, and that's strictly a personal choice. Once the fabrics are washed, I do put them in the dryer to dry them, but only for a couple of minutes, anywhere between 7 to 10 minutes, because I do not want them to dry really crisp. I want them to be a little bit damp, almost dry. Then I will lay out that fabric and smooth it with my hand. And I can do 1 layer at a time and smooth out all of those edges, and then I let that dry. From here, I'm going to be able to give it a treatment. What I want to do is have this as a nice, beautiful flat fabric so that my work will be precise. There is a product on the market that's going to make this fabric nice and crisp for us. So it will even be nicer than that original fabric. It's not a starch, and it's not a starch alternative. It's a treatment. And there's a few different ways you can buy it. If you're going to use it as a treatment to treat a lot of fabric, you can buy this large bottle and a refill bottle that you're going to be able to put everything in. It has that great mist. You can also buy starter kits. So we do have that fabric treatment, some pencils, and a glue, and I can go through this later. And if you really like to treat your fabric, you can get it in a gallon size. This fabric treatment has absolutely 0 scent. It's more than scent-free. It has 0 scent. And there's nothing in here that has a protein that will attract animals. So let's go to the ironing board and I'll show you how I treat this. When we look close at the fabric, this edge is that edge that was already finished for us. and it is the selvage. It is woven tighter than the rest of the fabric. You'll see all these little holes on that selvage. That's where the pins held on the fabric so that it was woven. So it does need to be tighter just to support as they're making it. Because this is tighter, it does react differently than the main body. And if we look at the underside, you'll really be able to see after it's washed how this is a lot tighter than this bottom fabric. So it's important that we cut this off. So this has been cut off. It's that same piece, the same size that has been cut out. If I smooth out that main fabric and smooth out that top piece, you can already see that that's a lot tighter. And if we compare the size, we have a difference of 1/4 of an inch. So we can see where this is a lot tighter than the main body. And that really shows how the fabric comes to you. It's already stretched and laid flat, but it's not how the fabric is. This is its natural state. This was as it was being worked on. So we can really see the difference. Now we're working with all of our fabric equal and the same. It's its natural state and it's ready to be prepared. So I have my fabric washed and it's dried, and I just laid it out to let that dry. I do, however, want to work with this fabric very flat and crisp. So I'm going to put a treatment on the fabric. So I'm using that spray bottle, going to wet that fabric. I am wanting to put that into this fabric, so we do want it a little bit damp. But just take our hands and make sure all of that fabric treatment goes into the fibers. We really want that treatment to go into the fibers, not sitting on the top. We can now iron this. I would give it about 15-20 seconds just so that all of that treatment does get into those fibers. We can always press from the back, and I would recommend that. The reason to press from the back is if there's anything on the bottom of your iron, it goes onto the back of the fabric, so we don't have to worry about it. We now can press that fabric. We do not want to push the iron so that we are bending those fibers, because we want them to stay in that natural state. You can move the iron, be very careful that you're not pushing, so you're not stretching that. And press that fabric. That fabric now has that beautiful finish that we like when we have a new fabric. If we have a fabric that we know we're going to cut on a 45-degree angle, we can always give it a double treatment on the back side. By treating this fabric, we end up putting the body back into this. We make it a little bit firmer. We keep it flat, and it helps our cutting be more accurate. And it actually will help it fray less as we're working on it. Our fabric is now treated and ready to be cut. I have no chemicals in here, and the fabric is the way it's supposed to be. It's not stretched, it's relaxed. And when I do go to wash the quilt, I know that it's going to stay nice for years to come. If you like your fabric really crisp and flat, you can always add more. You really cannot add too much. However, if you really soak an area, you'll hear that iron sizzle. We really don't need it to sizzle. This is oversaturating the fabric. It's better if we add layers, let that soak in, and then press. We want that treatment to go into the fibers, not sit on top. So if you've oversaturated it, you can always turn it from the other side and press. Here's the piece that was not treated, and here's the piece that's been washed and treated. You can see we have that same beautiful crispness that we like to work with. The difference is this is not going to give me any surprises. This is still not relaxed, but we can relax our fiber and put it back to how it should be in the relaxed state, even without washing. And that's what we need to do with our pre-cuts. So I can treat even these small little pieces. We can just lay those all out in a row, and we can give them that special treatment. And once that's soaked in for about 15-20 seconds, we can press. Now that fabric has that treatment on it, so it's less apt to fray and stretch as we're working on it. And it can help set it back to its natural fibers. So the treated fabric will be slightly smaller than the stretched fabric. So if we compare those sizes, we can see just a little bit of a difference. So these are not 2.5 inch after they've been treated. They are a little bit smaller, so keep that in mind for your pattern. But we now have that fabric pre-treated, and because it has that beautiful crispness, it's going to cut and sew beautifully. If you're wanting to learn a little bit more about pre-treating your fabric, if you do have this precision piecing book, there's a whole section here on treating that fabric and getting it prepared for our cutting. You can also use this fabric treatment in these little pens. So we can fill that up, and the end has this little sort of felt tip on it. So we're going to be able to do this for a little precise pressing. For example, when I do want to press this seam, I can set that seam, press that over with my fingers, and this was pre-treated, and you can already see how with very little pressing those seams stay. But with this little extra treatment, it's going to lay really flat. So very lightly, I'm just going to put that solution right over top of that higher part and press. And within seconds, you can see how flat that seam lays. So we have that beautiful finish on all sides. So by preparing our fabric before we start really sets us up for great stitching and great success. Keeping those seams exactly where we want those seams and having them not stretch out of shape, having the fabric remain beautiful right from the start to the finish and even through the washing. I'll put a link in the description so you can check it out. You can get it small, medium, and really large. Thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're talking about next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.